Your brain has two main characters working against you right now. One only cares about fast, easy wins, and one fears you might look incompetent. Together, they make starting a hard task feel physically uncomfortable, which is why checking your phone feels effortless, and sending that important email feels like lifting a car. This isn't a personal flaw. It's a hard-coded protocol your brain runs automatically, and it fires hardest on the high-leverage work that actually builds your career and your wealth. So the tasks with the most writing on them are exactly the ones your brain resists most. And there are two specific characters inside your head making that call. The first character is your dopamine system, and it runs on one rule. Give me a win right now, not later. Not after 6 weeks of grinding through a project nobody's clapped for yet. Right now. When you pick up your phone and a notification pops up, that system fires fast because the reward is instant and certain, no waiting required. When you open a project that won't pay off for weeks, that same system goes quiet because it can't see anything worth getting excited about yet. Dopamine isn't the reward chemical, by the way. It fires on the expectation of a reward, which means if the payoff feels too far away or too uncertain, the signal never really gets going. A phone notification has a clear, close-range payoff. A career-building project doesn't, so your dopamine system treats it like it barely exists. The second character is your amygdala, and its whole job is to scan for threats. Physical threats, social threats, emotional threats. It doesn't sort them into categories. It just flags anything that could cost you something. Starting a task that actually matters to you. Something where you could fail or fall short of your own standards. That registers to the amygdala the same way a loud bang does. Not because you're fragile. Because the amygdala treats the risk of looking incompetent and the risk of getting hurt as the same type of problem. So you've got one system that needs a guaranteed close-range win before it'll engage, and another system treating your open laptop like a mild emergency. Think of it like this. Your dopamine system is that friend who only wants to go places with no line and a guaranteed good time, and your amygdala is the friend who keeps asking, but what if something goes wrong? Together, they make staying put feel way safer than moving forward. This reaction scales with how much the task matters to you. The more you care about the outcome, the louder both voices get. So the work you most want to do is also the work that triggers the strongest resistance. That's not bad luck. That's just how the system runs. Motivated, driven people don't feel less resistance before meaningful work. They feel more of it, because their brain's protection system treats higher stakes as a bigger threat worth blocking. And if you tend to think things through before you act, which most people building something real do, your brain runs a longer, more thorough check before it'll let you start. That's not a flaw. It's actually a sign your brain is doing a more complete job of processing risk. The problem is that a more thorough check takes more time, and in that gap, the dopamine system has already handed you your phone. The timing of all this is what really gets people. Your brain's threat detection fires before you consciously register what you're avoiding, so by the time you notice you've opened a random tab instead of your inbox, the decision already happened about 2 seconds earlier, in systems you weren't paying attention to. You didn't choose to procrastinate. Your brain ran its check, decided the risk was too high, and handed you the phone before you even knew what's going on. Smart, motivated people feel more stuck before meaningful work, not less, because their brain's protection system scales with the stakes. That's not a character flaw. It's what happens when you actually care about what you're building. The resistance you feel isn't random friction. It's a signal that the work is real enough to trigger a real response. And the amygdala specifically is doing a lot more work here than most people realize. It runs that hard because your brain's primary job isn't to help you succeed. It's to minimize surprises and conserve energy. That's the operating principle underneath everything. When you sit down to start something new and complex, you're feeding your brain a task it can't fully model yet, and that unpredictability reads as a problem worth solving before you move forward. Your brain treats, I have to write this report, and I'm not sure it'll be good enough. Almost the same way it treats "there's a snake." Same system firing, different trigger pulling it. That's not a metaphor. Your amygdala genuinely doesn't sort threats into real ones and made-up ones. It just clocks anything that could cost you something and sends up the alarm. And starting a hard task costs a lot. Time, energy, focus, and worst of all, the risk of finding out you're not as capable as you hoped. That last one is what really gets the amygdala going, because it's not just a task on the line. Your self-image is on the line too. If you see yourself as someone who builds good things, then sitting down to start something that might come out bad is a direct hit to that identity, and your brain treats it like a threat worth avoiding. So this is why you suddenly feel the urge to clean your desk right before you start something real, or make another coffee, or reorganize your tabs, text someone back, check your email one more time. That's not you being weak or distracted. That's your amygdala steering you toward lower risk activity, because lower risk activity doesn't threaten anything. Cleaning the desk won't expose you. Answering a text won't reveal a gap in your skills. Your brain picks those options because they're safe, and safe feels better than exposed. There's also a second system involved here. The anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, runs a continuous cost-benefit check on your actions. When a task is high effort and the outcome is uncertain, the ACC generates what researchers call an aversive signal, a physical sense of friction that makes starting feel genuinely uncomfortable, not just mentally difficult. That friction isn't imaginary. It's a real neurological output, and it's designed to steer you away from anything that costs too much with too little certainty of return. Before you start anything, your brain runs a quick internal check on what's likely to happen, how much effort it'll take, and whether the payoff is worth it. For a familiar task you've done 100 times, that check runs fast and comes back clean. For a new, complex, high-stakes task, the check comes back full of unknowns, and unknowns register as risk. So the brain stalls. Not because you're lazy, but because stalling is the rational move when the system can't model what happens next. Think of it like an engine that won't turn over because the fuel mix is off. The engine isn't broken. The conditions just aren't right yet for it to commit to the burn. People who think carefully before acting tend to run longer internal checks before committing to anything. And if that sounds like you, that trait works in your favor in a lot of situations. But when it comes to starting hard work, it means the resistance builds up heavier, not lighter, the more seriously you take what you're doing. Just start doesn't fix any of this. You can't talk your way past a threat response with a motivational phrase, because the amygdala isn't listening to motivational phrases. It's scanning for danger, and right now, danger looks like opening that document. Telling yourself to push through it is like trying to argue with a smoke alarm while the kitchen's filling up with smoke. The alarm doesn't care about your argument. It stays on until the perceived threat clears. Procrastination isn't a discipline problem. It's your brain running a protection protocol on work that actually matters to you. And the stronger you care, the louder that protocol runs. And that protection protocol has a very specific gap where it does the most damage. The space between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it. Most people assume that gap is a motivation problem. It isn't. It's a gatekeeper problem. There's a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, and it acts as the gatekeeper for voluntary action. Before it gives the green light to anything, it physically weighs the perceived effort against the anticipated reward. For easy, familiar tasks like making coffee or answering a simple text, that calculation runs fast because your brain already knows the effort-reward math, and it works out fine. For a big, new, uncertain task, the gatekeeper stalls because it can't get a clean answer on either side of the equation, and it won't approve action until it does. While the gatekeeper's sitting there running its numbers, another system fills the space. Your default mode network kicks in, and that's the part of your brain that runs when you're not locked onto anything specific. It generates daydreams, random thoughts, mental wandering, and it's actually pretty comfortable in there. Your brain doesn't experience that state as wasted time. It experiences it as low cost and internally rewarding, which makes the jump to focused work feel like a real sacrifice by comparison. Switching from that wandering state into actual task focus isn't just a mental shift, it's a physical one. Your brain has to move resources out of the default mode network and spin up the task-positive network instead. And that transition costs something. It feels genuinely uncomfortable, especially when the task on the other side is uncertain and demanding. So the discomfort you feel in the first 2 minutes of starting something hard isn't really about the task itself. You're paying the transition cost, not the work cost. Your dopamine system makes this worse in a very specific way. The signal for finishing one clear sentence is strong and close. The signal for completing a 6-month project is distant, conditional, and hard to picture from where you're standing right now. The gatekeeper looks at both options, and the math isn't even close. One gets approved instantly, and one keeps getting stalled. And that's got nothing to do with how much you care about the work. So the gap between knowing and starting isn't a willpower problem. It's a signal strength problem. Your brain needs a strong enough signal that the payoff is real and worth the effort before it'll greenlight the action. And long-term uncertain work just doesn't generate that signal on its own. Trying harder doesn't fix this. Telling yourself to focus doesn't fix it either, because the gatekeeper doesn't respond to pep talks. It responds to math. The fix is to change the math. Lower the perceived effort so the gatekeeper's calculation actually comes out in your favor, and lower it for the ACC too, which is still running its own cost-benefit check in the background. Break the task down until the first step looks almost embarrassingly small, something so cheap and obvious that there's nothing left to stall on. Make the next action specific enough that uncertainty drops out of the equation entirely. Instead of work on the project, the first step is open the document and write one sentence. That's it. The gatekeeper can approve that because the cost is low and the action is clear. This also gives your dopamine system a concrete, close-range win instead of a vague promise sitting weeks away. One sentence done is a real, finished thing. Your brain registers that as a win, the signal gets stronger, and the next step gets easier to approve than the last one. The gap closes not because you pushed harder, but because you changed what your brain was being asked to evaluate in the first place. And once you understand that, the resistance you feel before hard work stops feeling like a personal failure and starts looking like a system you can actually work with. 2 minutes is all you need to reset that calculation. Commit to one sentence, one small action so cheap and obvious that the gatekeeper can't say no to it. That's not a motivational trick. It's how you change the math your brain is running. Apply the 2-minute rule to your highest value project today. Not your easiest task. Your highest value one, because that's exactly where your brain's protection system fires hardest. It targets the work that matters most because that work carries the highest risk of real personal change. And your brain treats that as the biggest threat of all. Subscribe for more actionable strategies on productivity and building systems that actually work.